Welcome back to my Industrial Craft 2 documentation and tutorial series. This is for Industrial Craft 2 version 2.0.345 in the experimental branch, Minecraft version 1.6.4. In this episode we'll be looking at the nuclear reactors and the new mechanics for the MOX fuel rods. To note, the Industrial Craft 2 wiki's information on nuclear reactor components is still correct as of the date of recording. The date is currently the 13th of January 2014. In this world I'm using two different reactor designs. This is a 120 EU per packet output design using dual standard uranium fuel rods. This has more cooling than is required, so therefore any heat that does get built up will be dissipated. To note, this could also be run with MOX fuel rods. However, the MOX ability would not come into effect here, and that will be demonstrated momentarily. Of the two, this reactor is somewhat safer, as there is no excess heat built up, and with the current version of Applied Energistics, there can be issues with the system accidentally pulling out the entire contents of the reactor. If there was more heat than the reactor hull could hold by itself, and that happened, there could be a catastrophic failure event of the reactor. Going over here to this reactor, this one is MOX fueled and is hot enough to be starting fires. Also, this will possibly, right there, cause damage. However, I do have a full hazmat suit, so I'm not concerned about dying. This reactor design has perfect heating and cooling, so there is no surplus of either. In order to heat this up, you simply remove heat vents and let the reactor naturally heat. The heat capacity is only to allow for more leeway in heating the reactor up, as this does allow for slightly more safety. Also, issues of connectivity can be slightly helped by this. Basically, if you lag when you're heating this up, you might end up having a new crater in your building area. That would probably be bad. So, the MOX fuel lasts roughly half the time of the uranium fuel. However, it does have the advantage of producing more power as the heat of the reactor increases. So by default, with this setup using uranium, the heat value does not matter, and it would output 80 EU per packet. Cold, this setup would be outputting 80 EU per packet using MOX fuel. However, at the current heat and using MOX fuel, this reactor, when active, will output 360 EU per packet. Some benchmarks to note: using this EU output indicator to measure heat, at the 300 EU per packet mark, the reactor will be safe and will not damage the player or start any fires. At the 350 EU per packet mark, the reactor will be damaging the player. Actually, between 301 and 350, player damage will occur, and above 3:51, the reactor will be starting fires. The maximum theoretical output would be 399 E per packet, as at 400 E per packet the reactor will undergo a catastrophic failure event. Also to note, the heat capacity plating is not required for the higher heat values. It simply gives more margin of error when heating up the reactor. And over here we have a very similar reactor setup. This is using 5 individual reactor chambers. However, it's effectively the same setup. In the center is a storage device. Here I have an MFSU. Any IC2 storage device will work for this. However, I am building as though the machine explosions were enabled. On the off chance that we happen to have an update that re-enables that, I don't want to have to rebuild this entire area. So, I have here the redstone behavior set to emit if empty, and the emit if empty condition only applies if the power stored is less than the total power that would be output in a packet. Here would be 2048. So as long as the contained power is below the 2048 mark, the redstone signal will be active. Active signal will turn on the reactor. Here these are all depleted, so they are currently not doing anything. This system does have the advantage of allowing for a pair of storage devices to be used. The first one keeps the reactors active and outputs power to the second, and the second can be used to either power or otherwise store EU. This has the advantage over other systems that use redstone and logic circuitry, as this simply uses the reactors and the central storage unit for control. So there are no additional calculations or computations that need to be done by the server, therefore reducing ticking tile entity count and increasing server performance. Just as a note, currently we have upwards of 60 reactors of various configurations running on the server, and no issues caused by that number of reactors. So the idea of using reactors over other power production methods has been shown to be relatively correct. Down here I have another cluster, 16 here, 16 on the very top, 4 in this chamber, 1 in here, and 5 here. There is another 16 at a different location, but I will not be showing that on this video. So, I will also be going over the math behind the new MOX fuel setup, as well as the new fuel pellet production. Here's the basic crafting recipe for that. The new fuel is the enriched nuclear reactor fuel, and the MOX fuel here for the MOX rods. So that will be in an addendum. So until that comes out, thank you for watching, and until next time, think big.